Greetings Guardians, my name is Bife here. In this series of videos I'm talking about the world of Destiny, and the creatures, characters and factions that inhabit it. In this moment of stillness, we can stop and see the world for the garden that it is, with the hope that one day it shall bloom once more.
It was the Nine who gave us purpose. It was the Nine who made us whole.
Some mysteries persist for so long without being resolved that they stray into the domain of the mundane. We have answers to questions like why the sky is blue, and what's it like inside the Traveler, but we've never had an answer about Xur. Until now. There has been a lot of speculation about who or what Xur is. Many within the tower know that he is a Jovian, but the exact meaning of this is still relatively poorly understood. There are fragments that we can interpret from what Xur has said in the past, though he speaks in a cryptic manner, and that leaves much of what he says up to interpretation. But now, something has changed. Thanks to a stolen fragment of Xur's own memories and experiences, we can understand best what he truly is, where he comes from, and how he ended up being the first agent and emissary of the Nine. It is a fragment that speaks of terrible loss, and it contextualizes everything that Xur has told us thus far. The vote for his induction was complete, and Xur stood for his formal farewell in the Chalkstone Temple, its roof facing the stars and rings above. The priestess gestures towards both of Xur's arms, smearing wet black silt on his upturned palms. We came from the dust. We burrowed into flesh for warmth, the priestess chanted, drawing 9 circles across his bare chest. Let me be first. I hear them louder now. Xur smiled to the holy woman, and her tentacles gestured warmly in return. The Jovians of the many moons had been so pleased to hear the gods were claiming one of their own. The priestess gestured to the ringed planet above, neighbor to their world. The alchemist foresaw our future and brought us permanent hosts from the world of the Third. I saw you, the alchemist says in Xur's mind. We filled life where our hosts were lifeless, remade our new countenance to suit Jovian form, and the Nine made us whole. The priestess lovingly gestured with a flick of her tentacles. You are the first. You are a vehicle. You are a means to escape my prison. Now, 9 have chosen our son, our Xur. Look how I shaped your kind to ultimately shape you. Xur's feet lifted from the ground. He grew fearful. I only need you. Something is wrong, Xur cried. He looked out over the crowd, thoughts contorted. I only need you. Xur expends the last of his personhood, pleading with his god, his painted brow begging for preservation. But his eyes blazed blue, his hand raised on his own, and the last of Xur's free will burned away as the alchemist turned the atmosphere of Titan to nitrogen. It isn't spelled out here, but it appears that 6 is responsible for the massacre of the Jovians on Titan. If we didn't have enough reasons to despise 6, member of the outer orbits associated with Saturn, then we have one more to add to the pile. 6 and the 9 needed an emissary, a go-between that would allow communication between themselves and beings within the third dimension. Xur was the first iteration of these emissaries, with Orin being the second, and Lodi the perfected third. The Jovians that Xur once represented are now seemingly all dead, save for the emissary that was, the last of his kind. But we have learned some sufficiently impressive information. Before that point, it appears that the Jovians of the Many Moons saw the Nine as their saviors, with Six in particular being a figure of some reverence. They referred to Six as the Alchemist, and apparently it provided the Jovians with host bodies from the world of three. These bodies were then filled with life before when they were lifeless. Given that all this happened on Titan, this implies that Six was somehow able to salvage the bodies of the dead and dying from the moments of the collapse on Titan, bodies that would act as hosts for the Jovians and allow them to survive. This then gives us an understanding of Xur's true origins. He is one of the Jovians of the Many Moons, a creature that hosts itself like a parasite or symbiotic organism within a suitable frame or host. The tendrils emitting from Xur's face are perhaps the best indication of his true nature, with the rest of his humanoid features being the way they are purely, I assume, because, well, it's a human body, or at least a dead or dying one. All this seems to be more confirmed by the words of Xur, which now have a lot more context. He recites what the priestess seemed to recite, which was that the bodies that they found themselves in were flesh that they burrowed into. This comes from him unprompted in the tower.
We came up from the dust and burrowed into flesh for warmth, and became something new.
They are clearly a very different people. There are some things that we can tell that make Xur's species, the Jovians, at least a little more similar to us than we might like to admit. For one, they appear to have communities, familial and religious dynamics, and even a sense of self. These can be understood and displayed by the use of the terms Sun and Holy Woman and Priestess, and by the crowd that ascended with pride to see Xur chosen by their gods. They were also clearly capable of building a social fabric, and a collected crowd indicates that communities could be built at large. All of this is much clearer thanks to those stolen moments of perspective from Xur's last free moments. We can also tell something which might seem small on the face of it, but I think is also very important. The Jovians had comparable identities to humans, in the broadest of terms. Once again, the use of the terms son and woman imply that at very least the concept of gender is at least loosely transferable between the species. And again, if Destiny has shown us anything, it's that assuming that the reality is that simple would simply be folly. After all, it is Cabal males that carry their pups, as opposed to Cabal females. And then take a look at the entire life cycle of the Hive, where most of them appear to start off as females, and it's worth remembering that even with some similarities, this might be a gross simplification or misunderstanding. But I suppose it simply goes to say that the Jovians, despite having tentacles for faces, are still people. They have something which allows them to be individual and themselves. It's something which is a small thing to go off of, but at least when comparing an alien species to humanity, any common ground is a good starting point. All that aside, there is a wealth of knowledge that Xur has told us in the past that now makes a great degree of sense thanks to this improved understanding of his origins. First of all, we should look at the earliest things he has told us.
Our colony failed. Our machines were not adequate to the task of preserving life. We were not adapted to local conditions. We saw the colony fail, not knowing what we saw.
This implication that Zur comes from a colony implies that he was not occupying his home world when he was discovered. It could be instead that he was, but that the term colony is generally referring to a large group of Jovians, like how one refers to a large grouping of ants as a colony. Regardless, the more remarkable thing to learn is that the Jovians had technology. Depending on their forms outside of their hosts, this would be a remarkable thing to discover. It would mean that they were the third most technologically capable group in Sol at some point in history, with the other two groups being the Vex and humanity. The breakdown and failure of the Jovian machines and their inability to adapt to local conditions might well have been the reason why they worshipped Six, as it seemingly intervened to save them so that it would be able to create an emissary. Perhaps implying that this was something that was done for Six alone is incorrect. It's possible that the whole of the Nine were an object of worship for the Jovians. This is simply unclear. Zur does also seem to imply that their transformation under Six was a choice that they made, unlike others within the system. It does make sense. After all, he was seemingly selected for this role, and it seems like he would have had to accept it first, even if he didn't necessarily understand what he was getting himself into.
The Awoken did not make a choice. We did.
As a quick reminder, the Awoken were created by the combination of light and darkness, which was a fate they did not choose for themselves. Not technically, at least. Putting that to the side, the Awoken emerged as something relatively recognizable so far as their own personhood was concerned. Some of what Zur said back in the day, though, lends doubt to the idea that his consciousness works in quite the same way. In fact, it might not necessarily be attached to a single body, lending further ideas to this possibility that Zur is indeed some kind of symbiotic or parasitic organism.
I think the cells of this body are dying already.
This might relate to how the Jovians see humanity, or at least human bodies. When they enter them, perhaps they bond with them, a little bit like how a hermit crab does with its shell. The shell will eventually need replacing over time due to growth and damage, and so perhaps Zur inhabits a body until he is no longer able to. If that assumption is true, then it makes for a grim possibility. It is conceivable that all the dead or dying of Titan have been preserved in time by Six, so that they can progressively be used up as vessels for Zur. In which case, some of what Zur says about these bodies originating from Earth might make sense. After all, Titan was a colony of Earth, and some of those people might have moved within their lifetime. This seems even more likely when you listen to this other statement from Zur.
Bodies come and go, but the cells remember. And if they forget, the Nine remember it for us.
Zur, at a certain point, makes an interesting bit of commentary regarding the Exos, and that he is similar to them, but not the same. This might be hinting to the same idea of how his consciousness has been implanted into a new body, thus reinforcing the idea that he is a parasitic being of some sort.
We are similar, Exo, but not the same.
Zur then also states something about one of his bodies, if we can presume that he has indeed indwelled within multiple bodies and not a single eternal corpse. It appears that it must at some point originate from Earth.
Some of the cells in this body began on this world. How strange to return.
From the sounds of things, the bodies that were repurposed by the Nine as hosts for the Jovians also underwent a change to make them more suitable. Whilst some changes might have naturally occurred over many colonist generations, the Nine may have also had some dramatic inputs, as is their blunt way with things.
Some of this body's ancestors were born on this world, but we will greatly change to live in the outer worlds.
Understanding Xur may bring us answers to one of the greatest long-running mysteries within the entirety of Sol, but in the grand scheme of things, it's worth remembering he was still a failure. The Nine needed an emissary capable of communication, yes, but as a creature robbed of his will, the Nine had a tool incapable of collaboration. For their will to be communicated and for their agenda to be represented, they needed more than a simple agent. This is how Orin and Lodi were brought into the fold. After all, Three's death heralded a peril that they would need to all face, and an emissary of the Nine would be an essential part of any of their plans going forward. And it appears that the Nine may have been planning for this even in the days when Xur was young. After all, you saw what Shiro 4 told us about, and it appears that Xur may have known about that too.
There is a door in the woods. It is opening.
The Nine have touched many parts of the system and changed the fates of its many people. Few have been as affected by the Nine as Mara Sov and the Awoken. After all, it was the Nine who claimed her lover, the first Queen's Wrath, Sieur Ido. As one of our most powerful allies, it is important to understand where Mara's heart might lead her, and what bearing the Nine have had on it. Her loyalty may help to guarantee our survival in this future conflict. That is where our next investigation will take us. To the heart of the Dreaming City, and a communion between Xur and the Queen of the Awoken. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, go ahead and leave a comment down below, and also remember that you can hit the like button. And if you want more content from universes near and far, hit subscribe and the bell next to subscribe. If you want to support my work on lore content generally, you can do so by jumping in on the Patreon. The names you're seeing on screen are patrons of the Disciple tier or higher. In the meantime though, know that your viewership as always has been quite enough for me. And that in the meantime, my name has been Bife. Ad Astra et Ultra. I'll see you, Starside.